The judge paused with his pen above the paper, then looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Hall," he said, voice gravelly, "for the record, you are asking the court to dissolve your marriage on the grounds of irretrievable breakdown, after independent testing established that none of your 5 children share your DNA. Is that correct?" I heard the word none like a bell struck underwater. I nodded because there was a rumor in that room and words were for people who hadn't watched their whole life tilt off its hinges. The courtroom smelled like old varnish and paper. On the bench behind me, someone coughed the way strangers do in places where stories end. Let me back up, though not very far. There isn't much before. When the truth arrives in a single sentence on a lime green email banner, results are ready. I didn't even buy the kit for myself. It was for the twin science project, family genes, with glue sticks and glitter, and a poster board too big to fit through the classroom door without turning sideways. We swabbed cheeks, we sealed envelopes, we joked about Vikings and Neanderthals. My wife, Sienna, rolled her eyes and said if this revealed that I wasn't from the planet where people leave socks all over the house, she'd be delighted. 3 weeks later, we were in the minivan outside the grocery store. One of the boys was crying because the other boys he looked to, victorious. The baby Maya, 15 months, was asleep with her mouth open, dreams catching flies. The older girls, Sadie and Noah, argued about who had the right to claim the window seat on a day when the sky had nothing much to look at. I was making a noble attempt at family democracy when my phone buzzed. Results are ready. Sienna was half out the door, balancing the reusable bags on her hip. "Forward it to me, babe," she said. "I want to see if your earwax is sticky or flaky or whatever." I tapped the link and the page bloomed open with cheerful graphs. Great news. No markers for major inherited conditions. Scroll. Your daughter Noah shares 0% DNA. I laughed. Then I didn't. I scrolled. Your daughter Sadie shares 0% DNA. My mouth got dry. Scroll. Your son Owen shares 0% DNA. Another line. Your son Liam shares 0% DNA. Last line. Your daughter Maya shares 0% DNA. My brain offered me explanations like a waiter who knew the kitchen was on fire. A glitch. Swabs got switched. They uploaded someone else's data to your account. All ridiculous. All preferable to the alternate universe in which I was a man strapped into a minivan with 5 children who did not, according to a very polite website, share a single molecule with me. Sienna leaned back in. "You forwarding it or flirting with your ancestry? Can you?" I started, and then forgot the rest of the sentence. She'd been married to me long enough to hear the alarm that didn't make sound. "What?" "Get in," I said. "Please." She slid into the passenger seat and closed the door gently, like we were trying not to wake the day. I handed her the phone. She squinted. Her face did 3 things in 3 seconds. Confusion, denial, calculation. Then she did a 4th thing I wasn't ready for. She went completely still. "What is this?" she said. Not a question, a spell. "What do you think it is?" I asked, which is the kind of question good men ask when they're trying to hold back a flood with their hands. "It's wrong," she said. "It has to be wrong." She read the lines out loud, stumbling only over the names, as if she'd never seen them arranged that way. Noah shares 0% DNA. Sadie shares 0%. Owen 0. Liam 0. Maya. She stopped on Maya like a needle on vinyl. Like the baby's name itself could cut the world in half. "It's wrong," she said again, but softer. I wanted to take her hand. I didn't. What was there to hold? She stared at the dashboard, at the faint scratches the kids had carved into it with the corner of a library card during an especially long traffic jam. "We mix up water bottles in this family," she said. "We mix up socks and lunchboxes, and the twins switch jerseys and nobody notices until a coach yells. We probably mixed up swabs. We labeled them," I said. I could hear my own voice, calm, reasonable. A man holding a parachute that hadn't opened and explaining wind speed. She raised her eyes to mine, and there was a look I'd never seen, like she'd arrived in a country whose language she didn't speak but whose traffic laws would still kill her if she guessed. "What are you saying, Mark?" "I'm saying we should do the test again," I said. "All of us. Not a mail-in kit. A lab. A doctor. We'll drive an hour. We'll pay cash. We'll—" I stopped because the twins had stopped bickering and were listening with perfectly round, perfectly identical eyes. "Can we have ice cream?" Owen asked. "Not now," Sienna and I said at the same time. "And the thing about the last time you say something together as a couple is you don't know it's the last time until long afterward." We did the lab. Swabs with barcodes that clicked like handcuffs when they sealed. Technicians in jackets that made everything sound official. The waiting room had children's books with missing pages and a fish tank in which every fish looked like a metaphor for something that refused to be kept. Sienna was a study in order. She lined the kids up by height for the nurse, braided the girls' hair tight enough to keep time itself from fraying, spoke to the receptionist the way you talk to a gatekeeper in a fairy tale. We had been through money emergencies, a house flood that turned the living room carpet into a sponge, a lice infestation that made our entire week itch. She had never, in a decade, looked so capable of holding a family together with the force of her will. She had also never looked farther away. On the drive home we didn't play the radio. We didn't do the license plate game. We didn't sing the dumb song about the taco truck that became a family anthem. During the summer we couldn't afford actual vacations. The twins fought quietly in whispers. Maya woke, blinked at me, and fell back asleep with trust heavy on her tongue. Sienna made spaghetti. We ate with exaggerated normalcy. After bedtime, after the negotiations, the one more page. The I can't possibly sleep without water in the blue cup. Not that blue cup, the other blue cup. Sienna stood at the sink, hands in soapy water, and said, "Mark, I need you to listen without interrupting." My chest tightened. The last time she'd used that sentence, she'd told me she was pregnant with the twins and terrified. I had interrupted her anyway, shouting, "We can do this," which was technically support and practically a man throwing encouraging words at a hurricane. "Okay," I said. She turned off the water and dried her hands slowly, like buying time at a store that had already closed. "What the email said," she began, then corrected herself. "What the lab might say. There are explanations." "Okay. Medical ones," she went on. "Chimerism, mosaicism, vanishing twin, maternal microchimerism. I read about them while the pasta boiled." Her voice trembled on the word "red," like she was holding up a shield made of paragraphs. "Those are rare," I said. "So are we," she answered too quickly. She set the towel down, squared her shoulders. "There are other explanations." The kitchen went quiet. The fridge hummed. Somewhere a pipe ticked. A house sound I had always loved but now sounded like a countdown. "Say it," I said. "We were apart," she said. "Once. Twice." A tear slipped down, and she swiped at it angrily. "We weren't apart like legally separated. We were apart like I was drowning and you were at work every night and every weekend, and when you came home your eyes were still at work, and I couldn't find mine, and everything in this house felt like a test I hadn't studied for. And there were men who..." She closed her eyes. "Mark, I'm not telling you because I want you to forgive me. I'm telling you because the truth is kinder to the kids than any of the lies I could build. I can't build them anymore." "Who?" I asked. It came out as air, not sound. She looked down at the counter like a map. "Before Noor, there was my boss. It lasted 3 weeks. I thought I hated him. I probably hated me." She swallowed. "Before Sadie, there was your brother's friend, the one who helped us move. The night you were in India with your dad, he stayed late to assemble the crib. I made him tea. And then she pressed both palms flat to the countertop as if bracing for a wave. "Before the twins, there was the contractor from the kitchen remodel. Before Maya, there was no one. Mark, I swear to you there was no one." She looked up finally, eyes red and feral. "I know how that sounds. I know how it looks on a chart. I don't have language big enough for the regret. Sometimes anger is a sprint. Sometimes it's a slow iron poured into your veins. I should have thrown something, maybe. I should have shouted every swear I knew and invented new ones, and asked the neighbors to contribute theirs until we had a pile big enough to bury us. Instead, I sat. The chair felt like an accusation. "Were you ever going to tell me," I asked, "if the email hadn't come?" "I don't know," she said. "I've told myself I would every day for 6 years." She shuddered. "I have never been brave. You always were. I told myself I'd borrow yours." "You can't," I said. "It doesn't work like that." She nodded. "I know." I slept on the couch that night and the next and the next. In the mornings, I made pancakes for the kids with too much vanilla, and they called them daddy cakes and asked for more. Sienna moved like a ghost through our days, measuring lunches, retying laces, packing homework folders with the accuracy of a clerk in a factory. We were to air traffic controllers working the same sky and not talking about the fire on the radar. The lab called a week later. The technician's voice was neutral and kind, like a receptionist in heaven. "The tests show a 0% probability of paternity for all 5 children," she said. "I'm very, very sorry." I remember thinking it was generous, that extra very. You can measure a life before and after by the words you learn to say out loud. I learned petition to disestablish paternity. I learned best interest of the child. I learned that you can sign a birth certificate and be a father in the soul and still have to hire a lawyer to remain one on paper. I didn't leave the next day. That always surprises people when I tell them. They assume discovery is exit. But children are not evidence, they're gravity. I revolved around them while the planet that was my marriage burned. We told no one at first, because shame is a feral thing that eats noise. Then I told my brother, and he said, "Come over," and we sat in his garage drinking warm beer, staring at the bikes hanging from the ceiling like gentle skeletons. He didn't say what I was braced to hear. "How could you not know?" He said, "You showed up for 5 humans for a decade. That's the definition that matters to me." Sienna told her sister and came home with eyes that looked scrubbed. She said I'm not the villain, she whispered, like she'd been handed absolution from a church I didn't attend. She said I'm messy. She laughed once, a bark. I think she means I ruined everything. We started therapy. The counselor's office had a rug with swirls that made me dizzy if I looked too long. "What do you want?" she asked me, the kind of question that feels like a trap because there's no way to answer without sounding either cruel or weak. "I want my children to be okay," I said. "I want to be their parent in every way the word can hold. I don't know what I want with my wife." Sienna stared at her hands, wedding band catching the lamplight, a bright lie. "I want to tell the truth for the rest of my life," she said, "even if the rest is very short." The counselor nodded. "Telling the truth is a good start," she said. "Repair requires more, but nearly all repair begins there." We told the kids a version that matched their ages, a story about grown-ups who loved them very much and were struggling to be kind to each other. Noah, 10 and already nobody's fool, asked, "Are you getting divorced?" Sienna glanced at me. I said, "We're trying to make the best choices for our family." Noah folded her arms. "That's not a no," she said, and left her door open that night, which is how I knew she wanted us to stand in the hallway where she could hear our footsteps. Sadie reacted the way she does to thunderstorms. She made a fort under the table and dragged the toddler in with her and didn't come out until the twins bribed her with fruit snacks. The twins themselves, chaos embodied, wanted to know which house would have the cool cereal and whether divorce meant to birthdays. Maya said "da-da" solemnly and patted my cheek as if I had forgotten who I was. We told Adam, the contractor, the boss, the friend. Yes, there were 3 men, 4, counting the boss I never met. A ghost, Sienna cried about while I held the edge of the couch like it might keep me from falling. Each conversation had its own weather. The contractor wept, a full-bodied grief that made me want to promise him things I could not legally promise. The friend was quiet so long I thought the call had dropped, then whispered, "I'm sorry for what I took from you." The boss sent a lawyerly email about respecting boundaries and privacy, and Sienna forwarded it to me with a subject line that read, "I cannot believe I let that man near our stove." It would be narratively satisfying to tell you one of them was a monster. None were. Men can be kind and cowardly in the same breath. I should know. I've done it. The court, when it finally entered the picture, cared about schedules and percentages and established parental relationships. They looked at photographs of me holding newborns who were not, in the genetic sense, mine, and at school forms with my sloppy signature, and at a calendar with 5 birthday parties circled in fluorescent marker. The judge said words that felt like a fence and a life raft at once. "Mr. Hall is a de facto father. It is in the best interest of the children to maintain continuity of care." Continuity. The sound of it made me dizzy with gratitude. Sienna and I filed for divorce the day after that ruling. Not because the judge required it. Because finally, there was a container around the children's lives, and I could allow myself to look at my own. "Stay," Sienna whispered the night before the hearing. We were standing in the kitchen in the dim light the microwave throws like a tiny moon. "Stay and be angry and call me names and never forgive me, but sleep in this house, and keep being the person who fixes the thing when it breaks." "I will always fix the thing when it breaks," I said. "But the thing that's broken is us." She nodded. Once, like a person who has been told the prognosis isn't changing. Divorce has textures you don't see from the outside. There are the smooth forms and the rough hours, the boxes you label and the moments when a sock left under a couch can ruin you. There is the awful grace of telling the school secretary and the pediatrician and the soccer coach, and discovering that everyone has a drawer for news like yours. There is the new choreography of pickup and drop-off, the awkward politeness of ex-in-law birthdays, the way your hand still reaches automatically to the right side of the bed even when the person who slept there is now a citizen of another address. And then there are the sudden miracles. The first Saturday morning, I woke in my new place, a rented half house with a porch that slanted like a shrug. I Thought I would die from the size of the quiet. Then the twins burst through the door. 2 hours later because they'd insisted pick up B at 9. Sharp and brought with them so much noise. The walls had to widen. We went to a park and built a fort out of sticks that sagged but didn't fall. No, colder and sharper these days. Laughed at something dumb I said and then looked startled by the sound. Sadie showed me a ladybug and solemnly announced it was divorced from its husband, but had shared custody of a leaf. Maya fell asleep on my chest while I watched dust motes float in a bar of late light and felt my heart do the math again. 5 children, 0 DNA, all mine. Sienna and I learned how to be kind roommates in a city with 2 apartments. We fought, yes, but mostly we scheduled. Rage sat between us like an unused chair. She started writing, I started running. She took a part-time job at the library where silence has rules. I repaired sinks in my own kitchen and in other people's kitchens for extra cash, and there's something satisfying about tightening a trap until water admits it was wrong to leak. We told the children more as they grew. You can't keep a lie intact in a house with science projects. Nor asked for details. Sadie asked for reassurance. The twins wanted to know if clones would simplify custody. Maya wanted a purple backpack with a heart and her name on it. We gave them all we could without burdening them with question marks they couldn't lift. We told them love is a decision you make every day with your hands and your feet and your calendar. We told them DNA is not a personality test. We told them they get to carry their own story the way they like, not the way anybody thinks they should. One night, a year after the day in the minivan, Nor climbed onto the porch step beside me and said, "Do you wish we weren't your kids?" She looked straight ahead when she asked, because she is fierce and refuses to cry in front of witnesses. "No," I said. "I wish the way you got here hadn't hurt people. But you're here. That's the miracle that gets to trump everything else." I hesitated. "Do you ever wish I weren't your dad?" She made a face. "That's a dumb question." "Agreed," I said. And we sat there listening to the neighbors' wind chimes have opinions about the breeze. When people hear my story, they tried to hand me a headline. 5 kids, none his, like I'm a cautionary tale you can fit on a lawn sign. Some make jokes because jokes are easier to carry than sadness. Some call Sienna names because it's simpler to hate a woman than to sit with a complicated marriage that broke in slow motion under the weight of money, babies, pretense, loneliness, and to people who loved each other and still managed to make a ruin. Here's my headline, if I get to write it: "A man stayed a father on purpose." That's it. That's the whole arc. The twist is less about DNA than about the kind of promises you keep when their origin story is ugly. The day the judge asked me to confirm none of your 5 children share your DNA, I wanted to stand and correct him. I wanted to say, they share my sleep, they share my jokes. They share my terrible dance moves and my very specific way of making grilled cheese. They share my tendency to talk to kettles like they can hear me and my belief that the first pancake is a sacrifice to the gods. They share my afternoons and my car and my health insurance. They share my last name and my first instinct. They share my future. What they don't share is chemistry. But judges like yes or no, so I said yes. And then I said something else that surprised even me. "Your Honor," I added, forcing my voice to be steady, "I am asking the court to dissolve our marriage. I am not asking the court to dissolve my fatherhood." He held my gaze a long time. The room went still enough to hear paper breathe. Then he nodded once. "Understood," he said. Outside, the sky was the wrong kind of blue for endings. Sienna was waiting on the steps with Maya on her hip. She handed me the diaper bag without meeting my eyes. "She has a rash," she said. "The cream is in the front pocket." "Okay," I said. The twins were arguing about whose turn it was to push the crosswalk button. Sadie held Noor's hand like a secret. Life, insolent, kept happening. I buckled Maya into her car seat and she patted my face with sticky hands, like I was a cliff she fully intended to climb for the rest of her life. "Bye, Daddy," the twins shouted in unison, like a chorus that didn't know it was the best sound I'd ever hear. Sadie waved solemnly, then ruined it by sticking her tongue out and giggling, because that's what 7-year-olds do to prevent the universe from getting too heavy. Noor nodded, chin high. Sienna stepped close enough to hand me Maya's pacifier. For a second, our hands touched, two citizens of a former country acknowledging a shared border. "Thank you," she said. It was for more than the pacifier. It was for continuity, for calendars, for deciding to keep the part of us that worked. I drove away with 5 kids, 0 DNA, a trunk full of car snacks, and a future that required a spreadsheet and a deep breath. I drove toward the version of man I had decided to be before. I knew what the test would say because some tests tell you who you are, and some just underline it. And if you're listening to this, wondering what you'd do if a result reduced your biology to a headline, if a judge asked you to say none out loud, ask yourself which story you'd want your children to tell about you when they are old enough to forgive you for being human. I wanted mine to say, he didn't run. He learned a new definition, and then he matched it. So here is the hook and the end in one breath. 5 children, known mine, and every morning. One choose them because fatherhood is not a lottery you win. It's a job you work. And I work it. Every snack, every bedtime, every science project that turns the kitchen into a lab. Every court date and school play and long, low night when a child won't sleep unless your heartbeat gives them a reason. That's the only test I care to pass now.
Crazy, right? Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.